So one of the common themes after Colby Covington won on Saturday and defeating Robbie Lawler is that this fight between him and Kamaru Usman is going to get particularly ugly in the lead up to it. And one of the thoughts that came to my mind is what exactly do people mean by it getting ugly? What exactly do they expect Colby or Kamaru to say that's going to be so ugly? So one of the articles that I pulled up here is just a snippet from Bloody Elbow. Don't worry, I got my ad block on. I'm not giving them any money. But it says, so now we have Colby going against Kamaru next. That's quite conceivably going to be the worst bit of trash talk we'll ever witness for a title fight. And that could also just refer to the fact that they're not particularly good at coming up with good trash talk on the spot. There may even be a substantial political tone that makes proceedings extra ugly. And they were saying that Trump tweeted a support of Covington, and that the younger Trumps are there as well. So as far as what we can expect and what I think is realistic here, I think there are a couple different ways that we can look at what could potentially get ugly here. And I think it's fairly safe to bet that if it's going to get ugly, it's probably going to start on Colby's side, because Colby tends to take some deep shots. If you look at the shot that he took at Matt Hughes after his fight with Robbie Lawler, it doesn't seem like it's beyond Colby to take some deep shots. But as far as what he actually would say and what we think he would say, that's really worth some interesting consideration. As far as prediction goes, there's two ways that in theory it could get ugly. It could get ugly in that he makes a very personal statement to Kamaru Usman that has nothing to do with race or anything else. And then there's like the idea that there could be something where race gets involved. As far as stuff where race gets involved, I think the fact that there are so many left-wing people in the MMA media, obviously Bloody Elbow comes from that perspective. I had another video that I put up from Yahoo where there's just this absolute trash article by Elias Cepeda talking about how racist Donald Trump is and how Colby Covington is a sign of racism because he supports Trump or whatever the hell that's supposed to mean, that the slogan "Make America Great Again" is racist. So I think there are people who are just waiting for him to say something that tends to be on the pro-Trump side, and they'll just call that ugly because it's just positive for Trump. I don't know that I really consider that to be too bad. The one area where I think it could trigger some people where they feel the need to call it racist or say that it's racist would be if you look at Kamaru Usman and his background. I believe he was born in Nigeria, moved to America. I believe he lived in Texas throughout school. Went to Nebraska for college. After that, then moved to Florida and began his MMA career. So most of his adult life, or most of his life, you would say at this point, has been living in America. After he graduated college, he was looking for a spot on America's wrestling team. So he was trying to represent himself as an American, not as a Nigerian. So gets into MMA, adopts the nickname Nigerian Nightmare. And then from there, when you look at the UFC broadcast, they usually put the flag where the country where the person's from, rather than being an American flag, which is the country that Usman at one point was going to represent for wrestling. They put a Nigerian flag for it. So there's a chance that Colby makes some kind of statement along the lines of, well, you've been living in America for this long. If you love Nigeria so much that you're calling yourself the Nigerian Nightmare and you're putting that flag on your shorts, why don't you just go back there? I don't know that he would say that, but if he does say that, in and of itself, I don't know if there's anything that's necessarily racist about it, because like I just laid out in this story, a lot of Kamaru's background is based in America, yet he seems to show a lot of pride for Nigeria. So I guess you could make that claim. I don't know that it would be inherently racist, but because the recent thing that happened in the middle of July with Donald Trump, where he said that the four freshman congresswomen, they don't like America very much. This is in his terms, that they don't like America very much. They're always complaining about America. They're always so proud of the countries that they come from. Why don't they just go back there and try out their policies there and prove that their policies are so effective in those countries? And then once they actually do that, then they can come back and show us what works so well. And that was taken into the context of, oh, he's just saying they should go back to where they come from because they're brown. And that's how a lot of people took it to mean. So seeing how that was taken out of context a little bit, where the statement was more like, hey, if you got these great ideas, go prove them and then come back and share them with us. And that was turned into, oh, if you're brown, you don't belong in this country, leave. If people were willing to get that read off of it, then if Colby Covington did make a comment saying that if Usman is so proud of his Nigerian heritage, why doesn't he go live out in Nigeria, train in Nigeria, and improve the Nigerian economy or whatever else? If he made a claim like that, I could easily see that be understood as him taking a page out of Trump's book with the four congresswomen and people having an issue with that. But I don't know that that'd be the worst thing that he could possibly say. As far as any other stuff that gets into politics, there's this understanding, I think, from the left that they feel as though Trump and the people who support Trump are racist. That's typically not true. If you ever talk to most Trump supporters, you realize that's not the case. They may dislike some people of color who have opposite political opinions from them, but if you're a person of color has the same political opinions, they like that. And that goes both ways, obviously. So if you see someone like Candace Owens, people on the left think of, they'll say some really nasty stuff about her just because of where her political opinions are, but most people on the right tend to enjoy her and like listening to her. and there are plenty of others like that. So as far as like the political stuff goes, I think really the one area where it could be a bit of an issue is if he does make that go back to your country type of thing, or make a claim that gets interpreted as go back to your country. So in that area, maybe it gets a little bit ugly. As far as personal stuff goes, I mean, I guess if you know more about Usman specifically, you could probably make some personal stuff. I think the one area where it seems like there's a bit of an obvious hit and something that Colby's already touched on is the fact that Usman's father is in jail, and he will be in jail up until 2021. I haven't done a ton of research on this. I did watch the Joe Rogan podcast where Kamaru Usman was on it talking about how his father was wrongfully put in jail and then he had a really long sentence and that he couldn't wait until he got out, and he tries to talk to him and visit him as much as he can. But Usman put it in such a way where it sounded as though his dad was a bit of a victim of circumstance, and that he had owned a couple ambulance companies and that people working under him had committed Medicare fraud. And then when they got caught, they just immediately pled guilty and then ratted out Usman's father, and Usman's father ended up taking the brunt of it from a legal standpoint. I did have a comment on the podcast video that seemed to be coming from someone who at least researched it a little bit more. So that would be right here. I guess it's obvious to point out that the guy's profile picture is a Confederate flag. I guess if the facts are correct, it doesn't really matter whether it's a Confederate flag or like a smiling puppy. Like, just if the facts are true, the facts are true. If they're not true, then they're not true. I really don't need to get bothered doing anything ad hominem here. But as far as what he said, and obviously it seems like he's not terribly a big fan of it. He posted a court opinion that was on the appeal that was denied from Marty Usman's dad, but it says Marty Usman's dad is a crook. This appeal was being denied, locked up in jail until January 2021 or until June 2021. The video, I believe, is the Joe Rogan podcast, and it says Usman's lying on the show, saying that his father's innocent and was only arrested because he's an immigrant. I don't know that Usman said that it was because he was an immigrant or not, or that he's just faking a liar. Obviously, Usman is going to be given a story from his father that is likely going to be as positive as possible, given that it's what his father's telling him. When you call someone a liar, you're oftentimes implying that they know that what they're saying isn't true, but they're saying it anyway. I don't know that what Usman said wasn't true in the first place, and if it wasn't true, I don't know that he's saying it on purpose or whether he's just saying what he believes to be true because that's what he's been told. So I wouldn't hold that against Usman at all. My response to it was, it's hard to tell from that court opinion whether his dad pushed for his companies to transport non-emergency patients and lie about it, or if the people beneath him made that decision. No, to get into more detail on that, what he got in trouble for with the non-emergency patients is that there would be patients who would be transported in the ambulances and in situations where Medicare would cover it if there was like some sort of life-threatening issue, but if they were perfectly fine and stable and an ambulance transported them, Medicare would not cover it. So apparently the ambulance companies lied about the medical condition these people were in to transport them, and ended up bringing up, I think it was $3.6 million in bills that were considered fraudulent. So that's what this was all about. I said, or if the people beneath him made that decision. It also seems unclear when he realized that doing so was illegal. Kamaru made it sound like his employees went rogue on his dad and threw him under the bus when they got caught. Seems plausible. That said, the court had all the evidence and they still decided to put him in jail for 15 years. So there's likely strong evidence that his dad knew what was going on and did it anyway. And then this guy then said, no, that's because it was an appeals court denial. It's not going to include all the evidence used at trial to convict him. You have to go through the entire transcript of the trial to get that information. Also, it's not plausible at all that the employees went rogue and threw him under the bus. That's all bullshit. First off, his father was offered a plea deal, which he rejected. He chose to go to trial. Second, his father had a criminal record. This isn't the first time he was involved with shady practices. It was taken into account at sentencing. And then it goes on beyond this, saying what kind of businessman hires people and doesn't know what's going on. I guess it depends. I mean, oftentimes when you run a business, you're not going to have a core competency in every area of business. So you're going to have to hire people who do have those core competencies. I don't know whether that was the case here or not, but I don't know. But the point, bringing it back to Colby, is that there's a good chance that Colby is going to talk about this. Colby has mentioned that Kamaru's dad's in jail and kind of use that as a bit of a barb against him. So as far as ugly goes, I definitely think it's possible that it gets ugly in terms of Colby referencing Kamaru's dad's situation and saying that he belongs in jail or that he's a crook, or kind of talking like the guy who I was talking with there. So as far as ugliness goes, I think there's a chance that something gets perceived as ugly if he talks about Kamaru and his strong affinity for Nigeria, even though he lived in America for so long. And I think there's a chance that he gets in deep on the Kamaru's dad being in jail part. But outside of that, I don't know that's really going to get as ugly as people are making it out to be. I think for the most part, it's just going to be really aggressive trash talk between two people who don't like each other. But I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of stuff where you're just like, oh man, that's too far. You can't cross that line.